Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Tulsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the At the Show podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia. I'm with my other co-host, Tony the Sugar Baggy Burt. How you doing, my man?
Doing really good, my friend. Excited to be here today. Talk some good flicks.
Yes, sir. And also the Sox are on a winning streak, which is surprising. Two
Very
games in a row.
Very surprising.
Getting that record up to, I think, four.
Very surprising ending to the game last night.
Yes, Benintendi coming through. The $75 million man came through yesterday. But as you know, we're on a little change of schedule. We're doing today as a Sunday at 2 o'clock due to the ballpark schedule. Next week, we'll be returning to our usual time at 8 o'clock. So it's going to be alternating when we have games during the week because I am a season ticket holder and Tony doesn't come to the games with me. So we try to get to them as much as we can. But we have a lot of baseball talk today. So baseball is back, Tone. We're going to go back to the old format of the show of basically going through 5 and 5 of our favorite films. Probably have an argument about one of these films I already can see.
So, let me tell you, I went to a special movie counseling. There will be no arguing, my friend. Only amazing movie banter.
That was just a joke.
I know it was. I was also joking.
But let's kick things off, Tone. Let's get into what we've been watching this week.
Let's do it.
That's a me. And also, what were you just watching?
Oh, so you already got the there you go.
Oh, there it is.
So what were you watching this week, my man?
Oh,
I don't think I'm selling it this week. Maybe next week.
Oh, no, you said that last week.
Did I? Yeah, well, I just...
I've been watching a couple movies that I've seen quite a few times, and because this week I wanted something a little bit more familiar, so I started with A Little High Fidelity. Excellent movie, in my opinion, that really showcases a lot of awesome music, which, you know, I also enjoy. But John Cusack, I think his performance, it's cool because a lot of people focus on Say Anything and maybe that era of Cusack, but I think he nails his performance. Along does Jack Black and pretty much Tim Robbins and everyone else who's involved in the movie. What do you think?
Very good movie. Love the soundtrack. I know you had a poll up. It was a pretty tough poll with this one in it. Very underrated too. It doesn't really get talked about a lot when we talk about like music movies. Cusack is one of my sentimental favorites because he's from the area. So I do like his films a lot.
I think the reason why I posted the poll was as I was trying to see if Clerks present, like I do these like scientific mind things, like if Clerks was present in any situation, would a movie as awesome as High Fidelity get the respect that it deserved? And it really didn't in the poll. People just immediately was like, Clerks. And I get it. Clerks is amazing. But there's just, I mean, Brian is dropping the amazing quotes here in the thing. My wife and myself have done The Night Laura Daddy Died, that whole part, probably more than a lot of quotes that we've done. But just a really, really, I enjoy the movie for it's got a really classic feel. And the television show that they did a couple years ago, I enjoyed quite a lot too with Zoe Kravitz. I thought it was also a great, and the book, also awesome. All around, big fan of that. Also, I watched just the other night Sicario, however you pronounce it. That being said, Um, Benicio del Toro's performance is amazing in that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's actually a very, very good series. The two movies, Sicario 1 and then part 2. Uh very, very graphic and kind of like fits to what's going on right now, in Mexico with the cartels. It's a little more fabricated story, but I liked it a lot. I liked actually both the films, and I was hoping they would create a new one coming soon, but this the second one kind of leaves off a cliffhanger. But yeah, this one's the one that like I think has a gripping story. It's pretty graphic and shows like kind of the turmoils of what the cartels can make people do. Especially Benicio del Toro's character. I really like
Yeah.
this movie a lot.
Josh Brolin's character I thought was also very
Mhm,
awesome, as is Emily Blunt.
mhm.
And I like the sequel, but I think the original is just a little bit better. But
Mhm.
overall, good movie. What have you been watching?
So I watched 2 films. The first was the one that you were telling me to watch, which was Alien Covenant. So I did watch it. I liked it. I think I actually liked it better than Prometheus.
Hmm.
Uh, but so it kinda gave me a little ramped up for Romulus coming up. Uh, so it surprised me because I finally watched it completely through and I liked it a lot. The second film I saw was a film that actually my mom happened to be watching when I came home from, the train. She had her day off and she was watching Small Soldiers of all films. A film that me and my brother watched as a kids about the little toy soldiers that are made up from microchips, super intelligent microchips that basically make them so smart. Yes, hello, Ellen. I'll shut up. It has a interesting cast and a young Kirsten Dunst, Kevin Dunn's in it. This is Phil Hartman's last role. You have the old man from Gremlins. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. In the film, you know, uh, what do you call it? David Cross is in there. Jay Moore. You have Dennis Leary. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting film. The funny thing is that have you seen this film, Tone?
Yeah, I still have the cassette from a long, long time ago with
Yeah.
the cool Disney box. It came in one of those cool Disney
Yeah.
boxes. Great movie.
Yeah, the funny thing about it is as now as I'm in developing in terms of coding, when he gets the name Gizmo as his password and he uses it, that turns out to be his coworker's password, he uses it to get into the database. I'm like, "That's so fake as shit." I was I'm like my mom's like, "What?" I'm like, "You can't do that. That's not how it works." And just me being that like back then I think, "Oh," but now it's like, knowing no better. I guess they put it there as a plot hole, but it's just me being me. But I love this film. It brings back a lot brought back a lot of good memories, and, it's a very entertaining film.
Very awesome. Very awesome movie. Alien Covenant, back to that really quick. I'm glad you enjoyed it because I was curious of what you would think of that. Very deep movie, I thought, as is Prometheus. I love Michael Fassbender's performance, playing dual roles in that movie. Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was very
nobody
enjoyable.
wants to hear your technical talk. Nobody wants to hear that at all.
Oh well, Brian.
And nobody wants you to correct me live again on air when I mispronounce something
Oh, yeah, I
because
was thinking it in my head, like, of all the things I mispronounce.
that's and I never and you know what? There's been 9 times where in my head I'm like, correct him, and I'm like, don't, because it just wouldn't sound nice. And
No,
then right
correct
there
me.
you did it, and then I was like, but
Yeah, it's a
that,
Spanish word, though, so that's why I corrected
I
you.
know, and that's when I love. That's when I was like, you know what? I should have known that for you. It would be. I understand. That's what's
Yeah.
fun about it, though.
Oh,
And I'm
correct me, please,
shocked
'cause I'm
that for
horrible.
all of this that I've mispronounced it that long, which is the embarrassing spot when you've seen the movie so many times. But
Nah, nah,
a lot
nah.
of classics here on the board that looks like we watched this past week. So
Yes,
good,
for sure. So,
good week of you.
that's what we watched this week. Let us know what you watched over at the show pod on Twitters or at, the Sugar Baggy or Lil Yumper. Let us know. Tony had such a heavy Chicago twang when he said Sicario, exactly how I pronounce it too. Yeah, that's what Brian says. Um, but yeah, those are good movies, man. Maybe we could do the breakdown of the Sicario series and then maybe the
Yeah,
Prometheus series as well,
I would like that. That would be
um,
awesome.
in the future. See, I like doing these, what we've been watching because it kind of makes me think about what we can do in the future for deep dives.
So many, even like when we go through these 10, I'm sure you'll be like, one day we could do this movie.
For
And
sure.
awesome.
Yeah, so a little preamble before we get to our list. This is just our list. If you don't agree with them, let us know what yours are. It's up for a discussion. What we like, but you might not like, and what we both like, we might not like it at all. um, and we also might disagree on movies that we like, and vice versa. It's so This is not like a definite list. We're not film snobs out there. We do like what we like, and you like what you like. So that's just the way the film should be. With the baseball season coming up, well, already started. We figured we'd do a baseball show to kind of like, I guess, put the stamp on the first full month of baseball. So we're gonna pick 5 movies of each that we both like that are baseball related, and discuss them in a little bit. So
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to because I try to pick, not, I mean, the movies you picked would be some that I wanted to pick. That's why I was excited when you sent me your list. I'm like, okay, I don't have to pick that one or that one or that one, and I can expand mine a little bit more. Excited to talk about these movies.
for sure, man. So you want to get into the first one?
Let's do it.
You tell him you're sure I've gone crazy, but I want to place 10 big ones on the Reds for the whole show.
I'm laying bets for Rothstein.
You're laying bets for me. That thief and Joe don't know it, but he just given me a loan.
Well, then what's left for the players?
Jimmy, you know what you feed a dray horse in the morning if you want a day's work out of him?
What?
Just enough so he knows he's hungry.
1988's Eight Men Out, directed by John Sayles, who also plays the role of Ring Lardner in the movie. He also directed some things such as the Bruce Springsteen Born to USA music video, the film Men with Guns, Shannon's Deal, and Lone Star. The film stars John Cusack, David Straightner, I don't know if he said that right, correct me if I'm wrong, D.B. Sweeney, John Mahoney, Michael Roker, Don Harvey, and Charlie Sheen. The movie had a box office of 5.6 million and a budget of 6 million. So the reason I picked this film is happens to be my favorite baseball film of all time. Uh, I know it's weird, but when I first saw it, I believed I saw it on WGN in the playback, and I automatically went to the rental store and rented it. And we actually bought it on VHS. I had it on VHS and I have it on DVD and Blu-ray. Uh, I love the fact that it's set in the old time Chicago. I love old period pieces about baseball, and I think this one actually holds true to the way it was done back then. All-star cast in this film. It's a little cheesy, but I do find it funny that you have a Cubs fan playing a White Sox legend in John Cusack playing the role of third baseman. Excuse me, Buck Weaver. I do love that Christopher Lloyd makes a small appearance in here. Just like small characters in this film are like awesome. Charlie Sheen's in this film, and he doesn't have a big role, but he's in it. Michael Roker, another person that I really loved in this film. Just a all around good, top to bottom good film. I thought gave you basically the gist of the story, gave you what was happening within the Chicago White Sox at the time, a little history behind it, and dramatized it a little bit up, for you that you felt bad. Also, it's been parodied in so many films, and TV shows after it. It actually caused a big baseball boom after this film, so that's why it's one of my favorites. What do you think, Tom?
Great movie. All around great cast, as you stated, from Michael Rooker all the way to Cusack and Charlie Sheen. And every time I think of DB Sweeney, I think of Fire in the Sky. So when I think of this movie, again, he's playing an opposite character to that. Great all-around movie. I like the way the scenes are filmed on the baseball field. I like the way all the scenes are actually filmed in the whole entire movie. Gives it a really good classic feel. I thought it was a really good first pick here. Even just here in the picture, it makes you actually feel like they're not actors. They actually are that team, 1919, 1918 team back then. Really awesome.
Yeah, and it's crazy because this film was actually in production hell for like 10 years. Sales, who actually directed, said he really wanted Gene Hackman and Martin Sheen to be in the movie. It took about 10 years for this movie to be made. It's kind of amazing. He had his son Charlie Sheen play center, and David Straightner was actually cast to play Shoeless Joe, but the movie passed along. They cast him as Eddie and got DB Sweeney to play it out. It's it's pretty crazy how it's based off a book, of course, but how they brought it to life. All the two of the players that actually could play ball were Charlie Sheen and John Cusack, which really helped make it look real. Also, they had like the backstory of them with Arnold Rothstein and Sport Sullivan that I thought was really well done by those two characters that play them, two great character actors. And Dick Cusack, the father of John Cusack, actually makes a cameo in the film. He's actually the judge in the trial, which I thought was very interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, all around great film. I really like it. You kind of feel bad for Joe Jackson in this film, as well as Buck Weaver. I just thought it was like all around well done. And anytime it's on, I watch it. I still pop it in just to have it on. During baseball season, it's like a tradition for me. Um, yeah, the guy in the parking garage in the Ferris Bueller. Yeah, he's also in Super Mario Bros. And he's also the original drummer of Sonic Youth.
Yeah, that is true.
Mhm.
Who's Sonic Youth bassist today? Kim Gordon is celebrating her birthday. So what a tie-in right there.
Yes, sir. But yeah, the film was awesome. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you guys checking this one out.
Definitely.
But that was my pick, Tone. Let's get to your pick.
You know that? Ah, bullshit. It was you, Raj. You did it. You son of a bitch. And nobody can ever take that away from you, neither. No matter what bullshit they try to tell you, that record's yours.
2001's 61, directed by legendary comedian Billy Crystal. He also directed Here Today, Forget Paris, and Comic Relief. Starring Barry Pepper, Thomas Jane, Richard Mauser, Seymour Castle, Bruce McGill, and Peter Jacobson. This film did not have a box office because it was an HBO exclusive and original from HBO Studios. So, Tone, this is one of your films. Let me know why you picked it.
I picked it for several different reasons. I picked it because it flies under the radar for the exact reason of being on HBO and not being released like in the theater. But when seeing this movie, because it wasn't one that I saw when it first came out, it was one that I saw a couple years later. I was shocked at how good it really was. Barry Pepper, starring in this movie along with Thomas Jane, playing, Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle. And to me, I think what really caught me and made me watch it is Anthony Michael Hall playing Whitey Ford, which is again, somebody again back to Cusack, and you're thinking the 80s. This isn't the Anthony Michael Hall that I'm used to, and everybody just does a really great job acting. And then you take a look back and see who's directing the movie, Billy Crystal, and you realize that Billy Crystal's a huge baseball fan. So who better to really put their stamp on the Yankees on a movie like this would be him. So all of that put together, I think, made for an excellent flick.
Definitely. I think it's crazy. Like two things that stick out to me. One is that Barry Pepper looks so much like the real Roger Ramirez. And that's one of the reasons he was cast. The second was that Thomas Jane never played baseball before even playing in this film. He didn't even know what baseball, like the rules of baseball. He never picked up a bat. And I thought he transitioned very well to show, he could, play ball if he wanted to. Although some of it was CGI. They use a lot of the home runs that they hit as CGI. But Crystal took a lot of that information to make it look real from the David Justice home run in the playoffs he saw, which just shows how much, of a fan Crystal was. Cool things that stick out, just to doing a little bit of research about this film is that, Billy Crystal was really, really close friends with Ricky Mantle before he passed. And he asked Mickey Mantle's family, can he include, the way Mickey was in terms of his drinking, the way he was carousing with everybody. And they said, yeah. And that's the way he is portrayed in the film is the way Mickey Mantle really was. Along with the stories going along, the one that you said, Anthony Michael Hall, when he tells a story about Mickey running in the outfield with Joe DiMaggio, and Joe says he got the ball. So Mickey has to pull up and ends up stepping in a hole and tearing his knee up. That's actually a Mantle story that he told Billy Crystal, and Billy Crystal included that in the film. I think this film is probably one of the best baseball movies, if not the best baseball movie, done. It's shows true to the story. It's very, very dramatic, and it's very entertaining in terms of, the play. And it just shows how good of a big of a fan Billy Crystal is by giving his love, to the game by portraying this for HBO. And also Peter Jacobson as Artie Green is a complete asshole, which I love. It just makes you hate that writer, and it's just all around done really, really done well.
Oh yeah, I mean Richard Mazer from The
Mm.
Thing is in it. Chris Bauer from The Wire. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of when actors like this show up and do a great job. And honestly, the story itself too, really just an awesome story because these guys were on the same team where they kind of compared it to the whole Sammy Sosa, Mark
Mark
McGuire
McGwire.
race for when that came out. But this seemed a little more personal than that because these guys were together playing, and this movie did a good job, I think, explaining all that.
Yeah, and he shows, like, the real, relationship between the 2 and the, catcher that used to live with them as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's a really entertaining, and, like, Thomas Jane, I think, steals the show. Like,
he
Barry
does.
Pepper's very good, but Thomas Jane as Mickey Mantle is just awesome. Great one-liners. You can see him struggling with his, not only his health, but, his own psyche in terms of, like, who he is. Uh and you kinda see how, they both, are treated differently, like, in terms of personas, like, it's Barry Pepper's character, Roger Maris, is more, standoffish and more private, while Mickey Mantle's more outlandish, and it kinda, reflects on how his teammates treat him. Although they're both loved by their teammates, one's preferred over the other, we find out. Just really well written and really well done, and I'm really happy that this movie was made, and it's pretty surprising it was made for an HBO exclusive, because I think this would've made money in the theaters if it was out on movie theaters.
I'm wondering kind of why, that's kind of um the route at the end of the day. I mean, I know why, but at the end of the day, why wasn't it at the theater? Because a lot of more people would have heard of it, I think, and it's not just about ticket sales or money, it's about getting a good movie like this so you can know the story and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a classic, man. If you haven't seen this one, check this one out. If you have HBO Max, I believe it's still on there. Um, but yeah, they filmed it at Old Tiger Stadium and they changed the seats. That's right, Brian. Because there was no accurate documentation of it, meaning how Yankee Stadium looked in the 1961s in terms of seats. When he faced the dilemma, a production designer, Rusty Smith, was told that Billy Crystal actually had an old bleacher seat from Yankee Stadium at that time. And though the seat was completely painted blue, he smelled a found chip of green on it that proved that the Yankee Stadium was green. So stuff like that, like Billy Crystal adding things like that in there, even adding in Tom Candidati to come in as Hoyt Wilhelm to face Roger. That's actually a real knuckleballer from the old days, in the 90s to come in and throw the knuckleball to show some realism to it. It was
Well,
all great stuff.
Brian brought up also, the
Mhm,
filming of Anthony Michael Hall portrays, left-handed pitcher Whitey Ford, but the way the scenes are filmed,
mhm.
the actors were wearing a reverse insignia with the numbers, and
Yeah.
it's filmed just like Lou Gehrig in The Pride of the Yankees with
Mhm.
Gary Cooper in 42. Cool stuff like that.
Yeah. It's a great film, great pick, man. When I saw this one, I smiled because I'm like, "Man, that's a really, really good one."
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, good one, man. But, let's move on to, our next one.
Here is a swing and a drive toward left field and deep. Oh boy.
No way, too high, too high.
It is gone off the reservation. A grand slam home run for Haywood.
Looked like a strike anyway.
Where you go? Too high? What does that mean, too high?
Too high.
So Vaughn is off to a rocky start as Haywood clears the bases with one swing.
Not too high, too hard, right?
First it was really high.
Who gives a shit? It's gone.
1989's Major League, directed by David S. Ward, who also directed Major League 2, King Ralph, The Program, and Don's Periscope. He also wrote The Sting, which he won an Oscar for, Sleepless in Seattle, and Saving Grace. The film stars Charlie Sheen, Tom Berenger, Wesley Snipes, Corbin Burnson, Rene Russo, Margaret Whitten, and James Gammon. It had a box office of $49 million on an $11 million budget. There's another one of my picks. When you talk baseball, usually most people mention Major League as a film. It has a big impact in culture in terms of comedy with baseball. It's one of the films I think that has basically transition every year, every decade, basically, as a film people watch. I don't know if it could be made today, in terms of this climate. Also with the fact that with the Cleveland Indian mascot not being as they say great. I would guess as a you basically shouldn't have the mascot as Cleveland Indian. It's not publicly right to have it. But in terms of the olden times, in terms of this film, I liked it a lot. I'm not a big believer in the mascot, but this film in general, like, is something one of my favorites due to the storylines, the characters. It's basically the Bad News Bears as adults. And again, this film was made from somebody who was a huge fan of Cleveland and David S. Ward, who wrote it. He was a huge fan of Cleveland, and they, like the Cubs and White Sox, didn't win a lot. They still haven't won a World Series, I believe, since the '40s, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and they're still trying, which I think they had the longest drought besides the Cubs was the Cleveland Indians, not the Cleveland
Sure.
Guardians. So it's just another struggling franchise, but, this film inspired a lot of people to, take things from it, like Mitch Williams, a former pitcher of the Cubs and Texas Rangers. His nickname was Wild Thing. You know, Bob Uecker just made Bob Uecker even a bigger star for his ad-libbing and his radio calling. You know, David, Charlie Sheen with the Wild Thing walkout, it just made him into a rock star. And I found it crazy that Charlie Sheen actually used roids, uh, for it says that he actually admitted to Sports Illustrated that he took steroids to prepare for this role. He believed the steroids caused him to increase his fastball to 85 miles an hour, which I think is really crazy. Just the dedication to the film. I love it. It's one of my favorite films. What do you think about it, Tom?
Oh, it's everything that you just said. It's hard with all these movies. This one's the best. That one's the best. This one's the best. This movie is great. If I go off the top of my head, I'm gonna say it's one of the first baseball movies I ever seen. Like when I was 9 or 10, when I probably shouldn't have been watching it, but everything about it and what I remember the most is, of course, the whole entire in the clubhouse, when they want to get to the owner and they keep removing the clothing pieces being 9 or 10 and seeing something like that and watching baseball and playing on a little league team, you're wanting to know when that's going to come into your clubhouse at 10 years old, but it never came. But in the movie, though, it worked very well. And all around great performances by 80s classic legends, Corbin Bernstein, Tom Berenger, Wesley Snipes. Do find it funny in the second one, Omar Epps switches and plays his role, but overall, I think this is just an all-around great movie.
Yeah, two great points by two people in the chat. Brian said, wasn't Jake Taylor loosely based on Carlton Fisk? And yes, he was. Jake Taylor was inspired by Carlton Fisk, according to the director, David Ward. Also, Eddie Harris was inspired by Gaylord Perry, who came out and said he cheated and is a Hall of Fame pitcher. Willie Mays Hayes, according to Ward, was also based off Ricky Henderson. Ryan Duran was the inspiration for Rick the Wild Thing Vaughn, and Pedro Serrano was partially based on Orlando Cepeda and Wade Boggs due to their superstitions of eating chicken before every game. Stuff like that. And then Jackie brings up a great thing saying, don't let Brian show you the alternate ending. Have you heard about this, Tom?
No, I haven't. Please fill me in.
So, in the film's original ending, Rachel Phelps admits before the final game that they are not had a good season and the team might be bankrupt if they don't have a good season. She said she became bitchy as a way to motivate the team, and she's actually a really huge Cleveland fan. So the ending shows her more of a happy, supportive mood of the players instead of the one that we saw now. They showed that to test audiences, and they found that test audiences actually liked the more bitchy Rachel Phelps than the person who actually is a good person at the end, like a twist. So they kept her as the bitchy person, which kind of, carried on to the second movie. But that's kind of funny that she's actually a good person in the original script and they filmed it, but everybody didn't like her being a good person. So they kept her as the bitchy Rachel Phelps.
Gives a whole different spin.
Yes, sir. Also, before we go, Dennis Hasbert, who plays Pedro Serrano, actually did hit a lot of bombs in batting practice and in real-time filming. So well that he actually got another role with another baseball movie that we're not going to discuss today, but Mr. Baseball, where he plays the Hammer. Max Dubois, where he hits bombs in there too. So Hasbro actually has a lot of talent in baseball. Awesome player.
It's probably one of my favorite characters in the movie. He just, it's awesome. Very
Yes,
awesome.
and just so many one-liners can come from here. Jabu,
Yeah.
Jabu. Hey bartender, Jabu needs a refill. Big body, big hit, happy body. Yeah, it's a great. But yeah, Major League's always on everybody's list. I knew I threw it on there, so I probably took one of the ones you were probably gonna pick. But
One real quick too. I like when Corbin finds out that Wild Thing's been sleeping with his wife. The way he spears him over the table in the locker room or whatever. That whole locker room brawl.
Yeah.
And also the thing that's always stuck with me is in the beginning when they're getting the slips in the locker. And they're looking through the locker and they're peeking, and like the whole prank where Charlie thinks he's been cut, but he hasn't been cut. I still always think about that because I thought it was a cool way to let the players, know that they were gone by just hanging the slip in the locker. All around great movie, man. Great
Hats
pick.
for Bats. Yeah. Great film. And Bob Uecker, who can't say any more about him. He's awesome. And ad-lib mostly everything, including, just a little bit outside. I don't know how these guys can lay off pitches so close. Stuff like that. As Pedro's left a small village on the fast-paced pass tonight. Even in the second one, when Serrano goes back, Serrano, he'll need a rocket up his ass to catch this one. Just little things like he's awesome in this series.
He's great.
But yeah, great pick. For this one, if you haven't seen this one, where have you been? But check it out. But we got another one coming up that Tony picked, and I really, really am excited that you picked this one.
Not to mention the fact you can't call yourself a prince and a great man. That's for the world.
Now, what the hell kind of goddamn writer you call yourself all tied up in rules and regulations? What's the point of being a writer? You can't say what you want to say.
You're not treating me like a writer. You're treating me like a stenographer. That a prince and a great man has fallen this day.
Has a certain ring to it.
It certainly does.
I thought you might like it. It's yours. It's a gift. From me.
Cobb, 1994's Cobb, directed by Ron Shelton, who also directed Bull Durham, White Men Can't Jump, Tin Cup, Play to the Bone, Dark Blue, and Hollywood Homicide. Movie stars Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Wool, and Lolita Davidovich. This movie had a box office of $1 million. They didn't give me a budget anywhere I looked, which means it probably did not make a lot of money. But Tone, tell me why you picked this film.
With the opportunity to do an awesome show like this, and also the opportunity of having probably talked both of us about a lot of baseball movies, I was trying to look for ones that are awesome, but maybe fly a little bit under the radar. And this was one that I was very, very, very excited to pick for lots of reasons.
You should have thrown in my head. You should have tried to kill me.
Tommy Lee Jones. For me, when I always had thought of Ty Cobb before this movie or anything, it was always these cool baseball cards that would come in your package that showed them pretty much like drawings, almost like they didn't look like real people. So to see him come to life with Tommy Lee Jones, Mr. Blown Away, you go through his list of awesome movies that Tommy Lee Jones is in. But the way the movie is filmed, just like in that scene that if you were watching just saw, it looks very authentic. And the back and forth between the old, I like movies where it's somebody in the present telling stories of the past too. And I think they do a really good job. Just again, Cobb, a very awesomely interesting baseball figure in history.
Yeah, it totally what they call them, those people that have like a yin and a yang to them. The crazy thing about this film is Albert Stump, who actually wrote the book and who is the character is played by Robert Wool. This film was based off his book, and it came out that a lot of the stuff in the film that he wrote is actually fabrication, which I thought was pretty crazy. Charles Lurster's biography, Ty Cobb, A Terrible Beauty, sets the record straight. Cobb did not attempt to have sex with a cocktail waitress in Las Vegas and attempt to pay her off. Stump fabricated this, and many other alleged darker aspects of Cobb's life are just plain not true. several serious baseball historians have labeled this film highly inaccurate. And that's kind of crazy because even I remember even reading books about Ty Cobb, when I was younger, really into baseball. I read a lot of baseball books, and they always described him as racist. Everybody hated him and just not a good person. Uh, I think he was like Ryan says, indeed a scumbag. They just need to go crazy with it. But he did take care of some of his teammates. I have read things like that with Mickey Cochran when he took care of him because Mickey Cochran was an alcoholic, didn't have money. He paid for basically for him to live. There's also stories about where he actually saw Shoeless Joe in Shoeless Joe's liquor store after he got banned from baseball, and he was there shopping. He went up to the counter, saw Joe, and Joe didn't say anything to him, and he said, "Well, aren't you gonna say hi to me, Joe?" And he's like, "I would have, Ty, but most people that come in here that know me don't want me to know them," which just shows that he didn't give a shit. Uh, Not really a great person, but I thought, Tommy Lee Jones plays the role really, really awesomely. It makes you show like some sympathy for him but you also you kind of like don't dislike the character. Roger Ebert came out and said that Cobb as one of the most original biopics was ever made and one of Tommy Lee Jones' best performances, but notes that Al Stump and his lack of development in the film, he hated it. I like this film. I remember when it came out, I would like again really into baseball, saw it and was like, "Holy shit!" Like this guy was horrible, horrible person. And now learning that it's a little bit more fabricated, um, kind of explains it. But there are some funny scenes in here, especially when the guy tells him, "How would you hit now, Mr. Cobb?" And he's like, "I say about 270." And he's like, "Oh, that's pretty surprising because back in your day, you hit like 360 and whatnot." He's like, "Why would you say you only 270?" He's like, "Because I'm 64 fucking years old." Just stuff like that made me laugh. The dialogue is very good. And I do love the black and white shots. I thought Tommy Lee Jones played the character perfectly. And I really like Robert Ohl, in Arliss, and I liked him in Bull Durham. I did like him in this film as well. Even though Ebert didn't. Is it
My
a great, great film? No, but it was enjoyable.
my sister's husband, when I met him about 16, 17 years ago, he's pretty much the one that introduced me to even a bigger love of baseball and the White Sox. Him and his family introduced me to two movies, 8 Men Out and Cobb. And both of these movies I think are awesome because again, it shows, as you can see, even in this picture that's on the screen, it's Cobb and Roger Clemens. They were, pieces of baseball history that are marked with, even if Cobb, the movie, is 50% correct, still, that's pretty awful to be 50% correct on some of the stuff that he was a part of. So
Yeah.
interesting to see these being filmed. Also very interesting, until doing research for the show, didn't realize, again, I didn't really ever look at who Cobb directed Cobb, but realizing that Ron Shelton was involved in so many other sports movies could also be why that, Cobb is filmed pretty awesome. And it wasn't like it was filmed by somebody who didn't have their hand on sports films.
Yes. Brian says the story about him beating up a guy with no arms is 100% true. Well, the funny thing is, in the film, that person is played by a very famous person. Jimmy Buffett held a free concert at Rickwood Field to fill the stands for game shots. And Buffett makes a brief cameo as a one-armed man who Cobb leaps into the stands to punch. So he punches Jimmy Buffett in the film, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, a bunch of inaccuracies are in the film, and there's also a mix of you know, stuff that is accurate. So I'm guessing Stump hammed it up, and for the time, that was something that was done all the time. Doesn't mean it's right, but it was done. Um, and I've read different conflicting stories on who Cobb was and stuff like that. The stuff about his mom was true to a point, though, Brian. There was no shotgun; it was actually a pistol that killed his father. That was like hammed up for it too. So but to me, it's a good sports documentary, I would say, because there's not really a lot of sports in it, biopic. There's not really a lot of him playing, and the reason for that was because Tommy Lee Jones actually had a broken leg, and most of the shots of him playing in a game were after he regained his mobility. So most of the film was shot with him in a cast. But it is enjoyable in terms of like it makes you feel like some sympathy and some hate for that character. So good pick, Tone. Really good pick.
Yeah, deeper.
Mhm. All right, let's move on to my next film.
Hey, Engelbert,
What?
there's chocolate all over this ball.
Look, Mr. Buttermaker, quit bugging me about my food. People are always bugging me about it. My shrink says that's why I'm so fat. So you're not doing me any good, so just quit it.
Okay.
1976, The Bad News Bears, directed by Michael Ritchie, who also directed The Golden Child, Fletch, The Scout, and he wrote Cool Runnings. The film stars Walter Matthau, Tatum O'Neal, Vic Morrow, and Jackie Earl Haley. It had a box office of 42 million and a budget of 9 million. So this is one of my picks, a film that definitely cannot be made today, a film that was remade, and I didn't really like the remake. I preferred the original because I'm a big Walter Matthau fan, even though I like Billy Bob Thornton. It's just a film of misfits, basically. I like the fact there's a bunch of misfits. One of my favorite scenes is when they had the two Latino kids who can't speak English, and they're screaming at Buttermaker about wearing the cup because it's against their religion. And then we're doing research today. I found out those kids actually could speak English perfectly. They didn't speak Spanish, so they had to learn that dialogue in the film. I love the dynamic between Tatum O'Neal and Walter Matthau as kind of like the father figure, and the girl that is like his daughter. But Matthau it does, I think, a perfect blend of being somebody lovable and somebody also with a dark side and can be, disliked in this film as like a bad person and a drunk, which he is. He has that lash out against Tatum O'Neal when he tells her like, "I'm trying to tell you, I don't want to be, I want to hang out with you, damn it." And it's kind of the way he treats the kids, but he kind of turns it around towards the end. And they don't win in the end, which I think is a nice little spin to one of those films of instead of having a good story, it kind of fits with the narrative of the film out there, always second place. But I really enjoyed this film. I still watch it to this day. I still laugh at it. Engelberg is probably my favorite character. This was the precursor to Hardball. It could have been, except no Notorious B.I.G. in it. But yeah, what do you think about this film, Tom?
Classic. I mean, again, I'll probably honestly because
yes, he is.
I've only seen this movie a couple times, so seeing the remake, I'm probably a little bit not as harsh on it, probably. But it's this one, of course, is the classic. There's a part in the remake that I just think is hilarious. They're at Hooters, and he has them singing along to "Cocaine" by Eric Clapton, and for some reason I find it ridiculous. But this movie, I watched this movie the other day. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called Little Children. You ever see this? It's got Jackie Earl Haley in a very, 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 just a very not good role. By as person standards, like in the movie, he's not a good person. But to see him where he is, for things like, as stated there, if we got accused of Freddy Krueger, I love to go back and see him in a role like this, to see that early start. And then, of course, Walter Matthau, man. I mean, every picture I was looking forward to do this. He has beers in his hand. He has a beer in his hand. I want to know, and maybe I'd like to do some research on an average day, how many beers Walter Matthau could put down, because he just seemed like just a cool dude, a very cool dude. And this movie is just, I think, a cool for that time period because of who he is and all that. So I think it's an awesome pick.
Yeah, for his beers, I actually have a list of the beers that were shown during filming.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so he was drinking Budweiser, Miller High Life, Schlitz, I think it's called, Kingers, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Lucky Lager, Mickey's Big Mouth, and Coors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they call them. I always love how they call them Boilermaker. Yeah, and Bill Lancaster, who wrote the screenplay, was based on his experiences with his father, Burt Lancaster. Buttermaker was based on Burt, who was known for his grumpiness, and the character of Amanda was based on himself, which I thought was pretty cool. And crazy thing is, like, Walter Matthau was actually the third choice to play Buttermaker. Steve McQueen and Warren Beatty were offered the part, but turned it down due to the involvement in other film projects. I don't think they could have pulled it off the way he did it.
No. I like those two actors quite a lot, but no, not at all.
Yeah, and also for the role of Amanda, Sarah Jessica Parker actually auditioned for it. Which
Walter Matthau, real quick before you move on, has some other movies in the 70s that would be like they're almost like Tarantino type movies.
Mhm.
Walter Matthau was he was a pretty good actor all around. So this is I think was awesome that he can show another side to who he was.
Yeah.
Probably
You
like to
know,
drink, I think, beer a lot in real life, though, probably.
oh, for sure, for sure. And lastly about the cast, Jodie Foster was cast at one point as Amanda, but dropped out to play Iris in the Martin Scorsese film Taxi Driver.
Mhm.
So that was a good choice for her.
Yes.
They also this film also had an alternate ending where Kelly is safe at home.
Mm.
Test audiences preferred the ending with him out as it could have been too much of a happy ending for the underdog Bears. So it seems to me with Major League and with the Bad News Bears sports movie watchers like when the team loses and also likes when the owner is an asshole and gets it up there. So yeah, but Bad News Bears, a classic, definitely could be made today. There are a lot of components that are not, as they say, politically correct in the film. But for its time, I thought it was hilarious in just the role of Buttermaker and the misfits that he has. A better sequel, the one where they go to Japan, or the one where they play the team in Houston. I would say the one they played the team in Houston. Breaking Ground, I think it's called.
Is William Devane the coach in that one? Which is the one where he's the?
I think it is.
Because Mathau's only in the first one, right?
Yeah, I know Amanda's only in the first one. I think it's William Devane. He plays what's his name's dad.
Is it Breaking Training we're talking
Breaking
about?
Training, yeah, Breaking Training, yeah.
Yeah, it's William Devane, yes.
Yeah, that's probably the best one, in my opinion. The one they go to Japan, it was just weird. Yeah, it's I don't know. And I think Ogilvy played is in all three of them, along with Jackie Earle Haley. He's in all three of them. And I think the second one they have Carmen Manzini as the pitcher. Yeah, I have seen these films a lot, so that's how come I can remember. But I would go with Breaking Training. What would you say?
Oh, I would say probably Breaking Training. I think it's kind of like the police academies. The deeper you get into the series,
Hey, Citizen on Patrol was good, man. Citizen on Patrol.
Okay, well, I mean, it's good, but I mean, it's kind of like the Friday the 13th. I really enjoy Takes Manhattan, but is it as good as 1, 2, 3? Probably not. But I mean, it's
what? Takes Manhattan's a classic, bro. No, but if you haven't seen this one, check this one out. I prefer to watch the original, not the remake, and then watch the remake and let me know what you prefer. But let's get into your next pick, Tone.
How you doing, Ace?
Anybody been on base?
Nobody.
Nobody?
This I ain't seen much of.
Me neither.
Chappie? I never have.
1999's For Love of the Game, directed by Sam Raimi, who also directed the Evil Dead series, the Spider-Man first trilogy, Darkman, The Quick and the Dead, Drag Me to Hell, The Gift, and more recently, he directed the Doctor Strange in the Mouth of Madness, Multiverse of Madness, starring Kevin Costner, Kelly Preston, John C. Reilly, J.K. Simmons, and Gino Malone. This movie had a box office of $46 million on a budget of $80 million. So it did not make a lot. Tony, this is one of your picks. Tell me why.
For the again, a different side of the baseball. I remember being in high school and my buddy had a bunch of DVDs and they're all like Pulp Fiction, Godfather, Goodfellas, and it's like For the Love of the Game. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, it's actually not that bad of a movie. I always remember him saying that. And then I sat and watched it and I actually enjoyed it quite a lot. I like I said, this is like Cobb where they're looking back. This is more like looking during the game at pieces of his life while he's pitching this game. And I found it to be very interesting also because this director has just directed so many movies. I like his movie, The Gift. quite a lot, and to see this movie fit into all those others that you mentioned. Kevin Costner, I mean, I wouldn't think he's ever made a bad sports movie, but I'm sure that would be a debate probably for some people. But I like this movie quite a lot. I know I wouldn't put it as good as probably his other ones, but I just thought it was a good movie to look a little bit deeper because it doesn't get talked about as much. And John C. Reilly, as mentioned, is awesome in the movie. A lot of good performances in the movie. J.K. Simmons is awesome in the movie. Even seeing someone like Brian Cox in this movie from Succession, a lot of good performances.
The original Hannibal Lecter.
Yes, Manhunter's a great movie.
To me personally, I think this is probably his second best movie in terms of baseball.
Okay, see,
I really
there you
like
go.
this
That's
film.
awesome. That's awesome.
I know it's a love story kind of in this, but I do like Sam Raimi. I like the kind of like the trials and tribulations of Superstar. You know what he goes through in terms of you know the challenges he faces. You see kind of the character of Billy Chapel and how he basically always put his career first and his team first before and his own personal stuff, and you kind of see him changing throughout the film. With that, there are some little tidbits and like love thrown towards Bull Durham. When he says in the eighth inning, just don't think, throw. That's actually Raimi was playing, a piece of tribute to that film. I found that hilarious when doing research for this. According to Kevin Costner, Yankees owner George Steinbrenner was becoming agitated that the Yankees could be seen losing in the film based on a film that was filmed at Yankee Stadium. Costner said he was able to calm Steinbrenner down by explaining that Billy Chapel, and not necessarily the game itself, was the major movie's focus. Costner also explained that the game would mean nothing to the Yankees and that it wasn't played as a winner-take-all scenario. Costner convinced Steinbrenner that in the movie's universe, the Yankees would clinch the AL East division the next day, keeping alive their World Series chances. Costner said that he later received a 1999 World Series ring as a thank you from George Steinbrenner. So George Steinbrenner did not like the Yankees losing, which is totally a George Steinbrenner thing. And Draft Day is an excellent movie. We don't talk about Draft Day being bad here.
Thank you very much. I didn't want to say anything, but thank you. It's a classic cheese. I love it.
Yeah. Also, J.K. Simmons is a huge Detroit Tigers fan, and he plays the manager of the Detroit Tigers. He also looks like my father-in-law, strikingly represented. So I love films with him in it. I love the fact that all the players on the Yankees were either minor leaguers or I think there was one actor, Michael Papajohn, who does have a baseball background in the film. And there was actually a person that played for them called Scott Pose, who for baseball nerds is the first person to ever bat for the Florida Marlins franchise, which I thought was pretty crazy. Meg Ryan and Helen Hunt turned down the role, but I think Patricia Kelly Preston's acting in here, her chemistry with Kevin Costner was really, really good. I don't think they could have kind of filmed it. I liked the film a lot. I thought it was very good, well done. It has a nice blend of sports and back end story, I think, and that's really, really makes the film good.
Kelly Preston's great in Twins too.
Yes. Yeah.
And also stated here in the which makes me think of all the times that my mother would play the Bodyguard soundtrack in the car when we would go places. So I've actually never sat down and watched the Bodyguard, but maybe I should.
I watched it. It doesn't live up to
the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is awesome. The film itself, no. Although my wife will disagree with me because she says yes. But I mean, yeah. But I like this film. Again, Sam Raimi kind of off of doing something different. Just like when he did The Quick and the Dead, which is something different. This is something that people don't really attribute to him in terms of sports movie. And he's also a Detroit boy. He's from Michigan, so it's kind of like his favorite team. He directed a movie about it, which I thought was pretty cool. So if you haven't checked this one out, check this one out. In my opinion, it's Costner's second best baseball movie. And with that, we can get to his best one, in my opinion.
Give me the ball. Well, he really hit the shit out of that one, didn't he? Held it like an egg. Yeah, and he scrambled the son of a bitch. Look at that. He hit the fucking bull. Guy gets a free steak. You having fun yet? Oh, yeah, I'm having a blast. Thanks. Good. God, the sucker teed off in that like he knew I was going to throw a fastball. He did know. How? I told him.
Bull Durham, directed by Ron Shelton, shot in 1988 and starring Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, Tim Robbins, Trey Wilson, and Robert Wool. The movie had a box office of 50 million on an $8 million budget. This is one of my picks, and when people mention, the minor leagues and how the minor leagues are and how it is to get to, that whole journey of getting from the minor leagues to pro ball in major leagues, uh, they always try to capture that essence of how it is, and reading through just the critics and people who've played, this film is the closest it is to how the minor leagues are for those in that era of getting to the majors, and how you can be really, really good in the minors, but not really considered great for the majors, even though no matter how big numbers you put up in the terms of Crash Davis. I think this film captures the essence of it. A comedy film with love story in it as well, but it kind of shows that aging, veteran, grizzled veteran teaching the young rookie, and then how they basically chew you up and spit you out at the end, how they let him go. When Nuke's actually ready to go to the majors, they cut him. Another great thing I love about this film is that, one of my favorite actors of all time, and he's in one of my favorite films, the great Kurt Russell, actually helped Ron Shelton write this film, was actually going to star in it as Crash. But when Costner was cast and did the role, he was so impressed, he wrote fan letters to Kevin Costner, because Kurt Russell had played minor league baseball in the '70s, so he kinda added little things to this film. It's just a lot of iconic things in this film that, make the Durham Bulls, so famous today, because they would have just been known as a minor league team. Now with this film, they're known as, like, when you think of minor league teams, the Durham Bulls always come to mind, What do you think about this film, Tom?
It's a cocksucking call.
You call me a cocksucker.
No, I
call me
said it was a cocksucking call. You can't throw me for that.
That whole scene right there is probably one of the greatest sports scenes. My favorite. It's hard. This is in my top. Definitely, I would put it in my top 3. And my favorite Kevin Costner sports movie for everything that you just said too. I think the way the movie is filmed, I think the movie is fun. It's a really fun movie. On top of showing all those things that you said, is just Susan Sarandon for me. Really awesome role. There's not a whole lot you can't say about this movie. I mean, definitely an amazing baseball pick.
Yeah, man, and just reading about, people who were considered for this film, like Jeff Bridges and Don Johnson were turned down the role of Crash. Carrie Fisher and Deborah Winger auditioned for the role of Annie but backed out. David Duchovny was considered for the role of Nuke. Charlie Sheen was considered for the role of Nuke Lelouch, but he was already committed to another movie at the time, Eight Men Out, which this film was kind of in dormant. And once Eight Men Out came out, it kind of like popped off the whole baseball craze of Major League and all the other films. But yeah, like even Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis were, in line to play Annie and Crash, but they changed it to they turned it down to do Moonlighting. So I mean, this could have went a whole bunch of different ways, but it didn't. And I'm glad the cast is. It's a classic movie. It has so many memorable quotes. The bull, which is something that was actually added for the film, is actually kept at the stadium because after it, which I thought was hilarious. So inspired the way the stadium changed there. Just like the little things of the guy who's like, "Don't guys, don't hit the ball to me. My girlfriend put a curse to my mitt." And then Nuke's like, "Give me your fucking mitt. I'll take it off." He's like, "No, you gotta cut a head off a live chicken," which again we see used in other films, as far as voodoo stuff like that, like little, superstitions, which is known in baseball. If you played baseball, people have it. Nomar Garciaparra is a living superstition. Always tapped his bat twice, tapped his toes, fixed his wristbands every time he, took a pitch. It's considered one of the number 5 of the 10 greatest sports films in America, which I thought was pretty crazy by the American Film Institute. It's a classic film, and when you think like baseball movies, Bull Durham has to be on top of that list, right, Tom?
You gotta put it up there. It's definitely gotta be there. I mean, probably not gonna talk about it today, but I just think for me, it's a far superior movie than Field of Dreams for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
now that you've mentioned I mean, just off the head, his sports rankings for me, the only movie that I think would go in between For the Love of the Game and Bull Durham isn't a baseball movie, but I think it's Tin Cup. I think he does a really good job in Tin Cup and Draft Day, and then I would probably put very at the end what I just said, Field of Dreams, but Bull Durham right there at the top.
Yeah, and Brian says Robert Wool coming to the mound and giving the wedding gift ideas. It's a classic moment. Jackie with the candlesticks always make a nice gift. That was actually inspired by a real conversation Robert Wool had with his wife. That was ad-libbed into there, which I thought was hilarious. So great that you guys are catching on to that because you're giving me more stuff to throw out, which I thought was pretty funny that Robert Wool actually had that conversation with his wife that candlesticks make a great gift, and he ad-libbed that into the film. Um, but yeah, definitely, I like this film better than Field. I think Field of Dreams is probably on my end of my list too. It's a good film, but I think it gets overhyped, in my opinion. Uh, but Bull Durham is one of my favorites. The only church that feeds the soul days, the Church of Baseball. Yep. Uh, and it also, it says like little baseball terms like duck snort, a ground ball with eyes. I love that when he's explained to him about, and then how he explains how the difference between hitting 250 and 300 is a extra ground ball. One thing, and it just shows how statistics and little things like that, like luck, kind of plays into you getting to the show.
Huh?
But yeah, just one of my favorite movies, and I still watch it to today's day. I think it's it's transitioned, and
It has.
lived it pretty well. Yeah, that's a career. Yeah, Jackie, that's a career. Yeah, it's it transitioned very well into the newer generation. Um, but let's get into your next one. And I know somebody is going to be extremely happy you picked this film.
Take your hands off. Hey, stop pushing. All right, just ask. What the fuck you pushing? I'm at you. Both of you, down in front. Fuck you. Down in front now.
Let's play some fucking ball. You all right? What's your fucking problem? You old busybody.
I try to capture the essence of Robert De Niro going
You
ape
did.
shit.
You did. Thank you.
1996 is The Fan, directed by Tony Scott, who also directed Man on Fire, Enemy of the State, Deja Vu, Crimson Tide, True Romance, The Last Boy Scout, Top Gun, and Days of Thunder. The movie stars Robert De Niro, Wesley Snipes, Ellen Barkin, Benicio del Toro, and John Leguizamo. It had a budget of $55 million and a box office of $42 million. Tell me why you like The Fan so much.
A buddy of mine who tunes into the show from high school, lives about 4 hours away from here. He and myself, his dad took us to the movies to see this movie, and for me, it's everything from the Stones blasting in the beginning. De Niro's character is just a big Rolling Stones fan, so there's a lot of Rolling Stones in it, all the way to Benicio, back to my Benicio del Toro amazingness. Had another buddy who always did this scene, and he always recreated the scene when he was in the shower and the press comes in there, but it's De Niro, and he's like, "Are you the press? Get out." And the way he would say it with his voice, I can't do it that well, but hey, Bobby, it's De Niro somewhere crazy like Cape Fear, but doesn't fall into like the Goodfellas mob category. And Wesley Snipes, which, what's crazy doing the show is I'm thinking, oh, Wesley Snipes, he was in Major League. I put so many connections. Robert Wool is in both Cobb and, Bull Durham. And I don't know why I didn't put together that before doing the show. But again, just the performances, so many different things. I like the movie quite a bit.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say Wesley Snipes because I didn't mention this when we went over Major League, but Wesley Snipes is a horrible baseball player. In Major League, the reason we never see Willie the Mays Hayes throw the ball is because Wesley Snipes couldn't throw the ball correctly. And I think it's hilarious that he plays this big, big hitter in this film. And, John Kruk, who was an extra, actually went to the director, Tony Scott, and said, yeah, Wesley Snipes does not look convincing the way he's swinging that bat. And he's like, he's telling Tony Scott, like, you don't really know too much about baseball, do you? Because in the dugout, you got a bunch of books in there. He goes, nobody would ever have that in the dugout like that. And Tony Scott told him to go away. He's like, he ignored him. Crazy thing is, Cal Ripken Jr. actually served as a consultant for this film. And the first time he met Robert De Niro was listening to the audio tape of Robert Bardo, who was a stalker and later murdered Rebecca Schaffner. The reason he was doing it was because Robert De Niro's a really big method actor, and he wanted to see the mindset of a stalker. Uh, Jack Nicholson turned down the role of Gil. Brad Pitt turned down the role of Bobby. He wanted to play Gil. Al Pacino was considered for the role of Gil.
God.
Mike Piazza was offered a role in this film. He turned it down. Mike Sadek, who is a former San Francisco Giant, was actually the body double for Robert De Niro when they were throwing the ball. Because I was watching it. I'm like, man, De Niro's pretty like rifling the ball pretty good there. And then I found out it was a body double, so that explains a lot. It's is it a great film, baseball film? No, but it's like nostalgia for me because I remember when this film came out. I remember watching the trailers. I remember, I always thought Bobby Rayburn was like Barry Bonds. That's who I always thought he represented in the film. Like, and I'm like, is this how Barry Bonds is? Like as a kid, you don't know. I mean, but it's definitely up there. It shows a lot how a fan can be crazy because he stabs the hell out of Benicio del Toro.
Oh yeah. Oh.
And the funny part is he's a knife salesman, which I always thought was funny too. I just
ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching it immediately thinking, can a father really leave his son at the game? Like at the beginning, he's like, just stay here for a second. I'll be right back. And like, could you imagine doing that to your son? Like, hey,
no,
just stay here for a second. I'll be right back. And like, you're going.
Yeah, and then he goes to get a client, and I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And then he ends up going back, and he's gone, and then he's home already, and then he's getting screamed at by the wife. De Niro is again, he does a good job in the character, but again, it's not as much the focus is on baseball. It reminds me kind of like hockey and sudden death, or a movie or even The Last Boy Scout in football. Like these, I put them in the category because it's awesome because you could talk about them because baseball's going on in the background. But Wesley Snipes, in this time period, really great in pretty much anything he was in, and that's pretty good performance of his.
It's funny you say sudden death because when I was doing research in this, this is a production note. During the production on The Fan, Warner Brothers signed $10 million contract with Wesley Snipes to star in one of their upcoming films, an action-adventure thriller titled Sandblast. It was based on a 1993 spec script by Steven Maeda, which he sold to them and producer Joel Silver for $750K. Eddie Murphy was originally going to star in this film, but he quit due to scheduling conflicts. Sandblast was going to be about a former specialist and landmine expert who joins a U.S. commando team to track down lost nuclear warheads, which are lost somewhere in the desert of the post-war Iraq. Besides the dangers of desert wasteland, his team would have to deal with a team of evil Green Berets. Do you know who was supposed to lead those Green Berets, Tony?
Oh, why don't you let me know?
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, there's the connection we were looking for.
Yeah, but Warner Brothers decided to cancel the film because they weren't sure of their both Snipes and Van Damme's box office potential. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, Van Damme did Time Cop, and Snipes already had done Major League, so I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
I would have watched the film. It probably would have been horrible, but I would have watched it.
Heck yeah. I mean, I still remember the huge cutout for Double Team with Van Damme and Rodman. I mean, this would have been probably better than that.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. And one last thing I want to ask you, Tony. So Tony Scott turned down the movie The Rock to direct this film. Do you think he made a good choice?
Well, let me spell it to you like this. Generally, I would say no. No, he didn't. But Tony Scott's like foray into other action movies is like he could have lost on missing out on an action movie to do this movie. But any other director, I think it would have been an extremely, extremely huge loss.
Yeah. Brian says obviously yes. The funny thing is Brian and well now you and Beef Loaf are the only people I know that constantly talk about this movie.
The only reason if I never had seen it in the theater originally with my friend, and it was just a movie I found like on the shelf somewhere, I don't think it would have stuck in my head as much as it has. But I'm also a big fan, as you know, of like the Roadhouse ridiculousness, and this kind of somehow falls into that. I mean, it's nowhere like this isn't where I really do believe Bull Durham is actually an excellently acted out movie around the cast. This movie is more of like everybody showed up to work and got to ham it out the most, and Tony Scott's filming style is chaotic at times, so it's like all that mixed together.
Yeah, I like it's all right movie. Like I don't hate it. It just makes me laugh that like you get and the first thing Beeflo said, Brian, when you drafted this film in the baseball draft was Bobby when I saw him.
One last thing before we move on too is I think it was still a time period where De Niro was still such a strong actor that if the script was weak, he was good enough to make up for the weakness in the script, where he started doing movies where the script was weak and then his acting style isn't as good as it used to be. Look how Pacino's really, really, really like that. And that's why Righteous Kill or whatever with both of them is an extreme train wreck, because it's just like
bad. Yeah. They try to recreate Heat with that one.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so talking about movies that don't really get talked about a lot, we can go on to my next one, which really doesn't really get mentioned a lot when we talk about sports movies.
Wait a minute. McGreevy, 1 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you so much. Come on, baby.
Oh, that's too easy. His head's so big, it's not even fair.
Need one.
Sweet. Give it 3 feet to the left.
Bum's way.
Bowers! I know it's you, buddy. I know it's you.
1994's Little Big League, directed by Andrew Scheinman, and this is his only directed film, but he did produce a bunch of other good films: A Few Good Men, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, Flipped, Ghost of Mississippi, which is a very good film. The film stars Luke Edwards, Timothy Brunsfield, Ashley Crowe, John Ashton, and Kevin Dunn. The film had a box office of $12 million on a budget of $20 million. Besides, me and Jackie actually talk about this film all the time when I see her. Little Big League was there. So growing up in the 90s, there were 2 films that kids with baseball, and it was this one and Rookie of the Year. I am not a fan of Rookie of the Year. I always thought it was stupid. Even though I was a Cubs fan at the time, I just didn't like. I thought Henry Rowan Gardner, I thought was a dumb thing. I always liked this film, even though it's not as believable to the whole about his grandfather passing away and then him becoming the manager as a 12-year-old. I just liked it because I thought it was funnier in terms of comedy. I love the fact that they had John Gordon of the Minnesota Twins play Wally Holland, who's actually was the voice of them, do his his little catchphrases, touch them all, his crazy stats he gives out. I love that they had Ken Griffey Jr., probably one of the most popular baseball players of the 90s in the film. Randy Johnson was in this film. That Seattle Mariners team in the 90s was like my second favorite team. I love the Lou Piniella Mariners. Like those, I watched them. I wanted them to win all the time when they played against the Yankees. And the first time they won the playoff series, I was really, really happy for them. This is a film that always stuck out to me. Me and my brother watched it all the time. We still quote it, with Bowers, Joe Silverman in the film is hilarious. Jonathan Silverman in the film is hilarious. Mike McGreevy, even though he went on to become a character in the Gilmore Girls, Scott Patterson is his name. He actually was a pitcher in the minor leagues before he transitioned into being an actor. So he does have that background. But yeah, it's always been one of my favorite films growing up. Also, Dennis Farina's in the film. And I love
him. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
So what'd you think about it?
Well, I'm not going to. I watched Rookie of the Year quite a lot, and I watched this movie quite a lot, and I thought they were both very good movies for when they were both in the, as you described, that 90s period when they both came out. Of course, I think, again, back to the reason why I would say I like Rookie of the Year is because I think I just remember watching it quite a lot at like 10 or 11. And back to my mind, as you like to say sometimes, you go into yourself. I start to imagine the world where if you did fall on your arm and I used to be a kid, could you throw it that hard? Or in the world of this, can you imagine if you are the manager of a baseball team or something like that? And honestly, being a kid and watching this movie, Timothy Busfield, of course, in my mind, my mom used to watch this show called 30 something in the early 90s, and he was like, it was like young couples going through their couple problems, and then you look further back and he's in Revenge of the Nerds, and awesome roles all around. Kevin Dunn is honestly, a lot of times on the show we bring up Kevin Dunn's name, and just to see him again in another role. Love the movie, great movie. I'm glad you picked it because, again, it's kind of a little bit of our theme today as we're looking for movies that are both big, and then we're looking a little bit deeper, and this was a good one. And that's the other one. I'm glad right here. I'm sorry, before you move on. Angels in the Outfield was the third one because I was over here going, there was 3 of them. That was the third movie that, like, at that time period, everybody, oh, look, we have a sweep.
Go ahead, announce it.
The White Sox have swept the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. They're not the Devil Rays anymore. They're just the Rays. But I still got
hooray for me!
Yeah, that's awesome that they did that. They finally won something.
Yeah, they won something. They won a series. Yes.
He gone.
More Pedro.
For Pedro, yeah, Pedro, Manager of the Year. But yeah, going back to this film, like I think there was like a little bit more, like, I guess, like the child conversation kind of like made me think about it too. Like the discussion when they're talking about Batman at McDonald's, and even though they filmed that like for Batman Returns, and then Batman Forever, where Christian go like, I am really hungry, I gotta go to McDonald's, stuff like that sticks out to me. Also, this film actually has a tie-in to the Major League franchise. You know how?
No. How?
So in Major League 3, that great movie, Major League 3, Back to the Minors, Corbin Burnson owns the Minnesota Twins. And in his office, there's a number 4 Luke Collins jersey hanging. So they kind of like, which I thought was kind of cool. So I'm guessing that he bought the team from Billy Haywood if they're going that route.
Hey, that could be true.
But yeah, I just like, I also just, like I said, I like this film because it has the real baseball players in terms of Griffey and Randy Johnson in it, and Lou Piniella. Also, Ivan Rodriguez is in the film, Rafael Palmeiro, little things like that. Kevin Elster plays their shortstop, which is another major league player who hit 4 home runs in a game. And I always remember him as, playing Pat Corning in this film. I just, that's why I prefer over the other one, but I can understand why you like the other one as well. A Bill Haywood must be allowed to speak his mind. Yes, that is true. Did you ever see Night Nurses from Jersey? Did you ever see Night Nurses from Jersey? And my wife responded, no. I'm afraid to Google that. Yeah, don't Google that. But it's a part of the film. But yeah, that's one of my picks. I'm glad we got to discuss it because, again, it doesn't get talked about a lot in terms of sports circles. But it's one of the films I grew up liking. I'm glad you liked it too. But let's get into our last one and your most passionate film you're about.
Did you ever play organized ball in your life? I just got back in the game. What does that mean? I used to play in high school. Excuse me? I used to play in high school. Freddie used to play in high school. That's nice. Scotty Carson signs him up. The judge okays the deal. Ain't talked to me yet. I got that in my deal for as long as I live. They got to talk to me. They got a contract. I want to see it.
1984's The Natural, directed by Barry Levinson, who also directed Bandits, Like the Dog, Sleepers, Jimmy Hollywood, Bugsy, Rain Man, Good Morning Vietnam, Avalon, and Toys. The film stars Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, Glenn Close, Kim Basinger, Wilford Brimley, diabetes, Robert Prosky, and Richard Farnsworth. The film had a budget of 28 million and a box office of 47 million. So Tony, tell everybody why you love The Natural so much.
For the same reasons why you mentioned in Eight Men Out, and I mentioned in Cobb, and I mentioned in a lot of different movies. It's the feel of the movie itself. It feels like you're back in the time period that they're trying to emulate. I do know that there are people who don't like the backstory to it, but it's the same reason why, honestly, for me, it was always the real reason that I enjoy it was it's probably my first memory actually, like I would be sitting like upstairs and then all of a sudden I would be downstairs and I would hear all of a sudden the television being turned up super loud by my dad and this part would be on. And for me, I think it's hilarious for people who say that they don't like this movie, but last night when Benintendi hit that home run, all those things that were being said and all those things of all the greatness. Oh, it was awesome. Oh, everyone's cheering. That's the same thing in this movie where I feel like is the passion in the movie is that you build up to this ending point where here's this guy who honestly, who the F is he? He's nobody to anybody at the time when he comes. But the reality is he found himself just like, Billy and For the Love of the Game and anything else, he found himself mixed up in a situation where he got shot in the beginning and he made it all the way back to the point where, well, he hits that home run at the end. And I just think that mixed with all of the Wilford Brimley is just awesome. Yeah, that being said, I just enjoy the movie, but I'm not passionate enough to think that if you don't enjoy it, that no reaction is going to be.
Really?
Because I'm going to find it to be hilarious because there's really no difference between this movie and let's say 8 Men Out besides biased opinions. But I'm glad to hear. I'm ready to hear what you got to say. Let's hear.
So I watched this movie again.
Mhm.
I went in a fresh mind. I'm like, let me give it another chance. I would say cinematically, the way it's shot, beautifully shot. The home run sequence at the end is awesome. Again, I read the book. I prefer the book. Have you read the book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I like the book better is because the book actually is Roy Hobbs' character is based off Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Yeah.
And the book puts it into a better perspective. For spoiler alert, the book's like 50 years old. I'm sorry. But Roy Hobbs strikes out in the end. And he does take the money from the judge. And Pop loses the team. And there's a boy that asks him at the end, say it ain't true, Roy. Which is the whole point of, the film. It's but listen.
No, I know you're right. No, I'm listening.
But that's the reason why I like the book better than the film. In terms of the baseball, the film, it's not horrible, but I do not like one thing about it is that that Robert Redford plays a 18-year-old kid, a 19-year-old kid. If they would have had somebody else play that 19-year-old and then Robert Redford play the older person, I would like it better. But Robert Redford is 50 years old playing a 18-year-old, which was one thing that looked weird to me. I like Robert Redford. I just don't like him too much in that young role in this film, and that's what threw it off for me. I also like the changes from the book and that kind of threw it off for me. I understand what they're doing in terms of they're making it a Hollywood spectacle. This film is well received. Everybody likes it. I mean, when Kirk Gibson hit the home run, people called him Roy Hobbs. His own teammates called him that. It's iconic in terms of the music. When Sammy Sosa was going for a 600 home run with Texas, the Rangers played The Natural every time a player hit a home run. That was played when he hit a 600 home run against the Cubs. So I understand like the resemblance and like the nostalgia this film gives off. It's just not one of my favorite films. Another thing I do like about the film is that the quote, "The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be," was taken by a wrestler, Bret Hart, from this film. And he used it as one of his catchphrases, which I thought was awesome. And also, you have to have a little boy in you, have a lot of a little boy in you to play Major League Baseball, is a direct quote from Roy Campanella. the former Brooklyn Dodgers catcher. Um, those are the reasons I don't like it. Do I think it's a horrible, horrible movie? No, but it's definitely. I'm sorry. Brian said Roy
Oh yeah.
Cobbs equals Goldberg.
I just find it funny that like if you like superhero movies, then all those same things I could portray onto a superhero movie
Mhm.
because most superhero movies end with the superhero winning. And if there was a comic book, which there is comic books where Superman dies, if I happen to watch the one where Superman lives, I can say, well, it's really not. And the reality is the movie for me is like a superhero movie because that's the whole purpose is like he made it from this and then he rose above. And there's a lot of cheesy in it. I mean, me and my dad would laugh all the time about him crashing in the wall. And I'd be like, how the hell does he die crashing into the wall? But like, it's the same thing with the fan. Like even in any movie, even the best movies, I can find some cheesy parts to it. I'm a huge Redford stan, so like for me, Robert Redford's kind of like I've never seen it that way, but when I rewatch it the next time, I'll try to imagine a world where he isn't playing the younger parts because I could see that. But again, I think it's just because it's been embedded into my life. That's why I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
I also see some of those points too. But then again, I could see some of those points in a lot of movies that that we also enjoy too. So it's a lot that goes into it, but I definitely respect your opinion.
Yeah, I think it's like you have a more of an emotional connection with this film. I
That's really
don't.
it. That's
Um,
it.
I don't really, have emotional connect. I mean, I watched it and I didn't think it was horrible. It wasn't one of my favorites. Uh, it still isn't. Like I said, I gave it a shot and
Yeah,
I
that's
just
good.
prefer the book. Yeah, and maybe because I read a lot about what Malmud was actually going for. He wanted to make the book like the Odyssey, and the certain character like Hobbs was supposed to be Odysseus, and Mercy was Vulcan, stuff like that. Like doing like research into that, like because like the Odyssey is probably one of my favorite Greek mythologies. Maybe that's why like I'm like, oh, maybe a little more judgmental on this film. Do I think it's horrible? Like the worst? No, definitely not. I give you shit saying that just to mess with
No,
you.
no, yeah.
But it's just not what I'm like. I think it's, in my opinion, overhyped, and I can see what you're saying about superheroes, but there are films where superheroes like do not achieve achieve the greatness of the day. Like for one, the Watchmen. The superheroes lose that in that film, and
That's
that's
like a
it.
5%.
I know, but I'm
I will
saying
give
though,
it to you that. No,
I'm
you're
just
right.
saying in general though, like you can make a film where the team doesn't win, or something bad happens to still be good. I'm just saying, like,
But like, can you imagine, like, and I'm trying to imagine, as you stated, you're not emotionally connected to this movie, but people who are in that home run at the end, we're going to replace this amazing home run shot at the end where he's bleeding and he was in the hospital and he's not going to make it. And we're going to replace it with, he was actually a piece of garbage. And we're going to say, well, you know what? This is more like Shoeless Joe, so it's better. I mean, I get what you're saying.
You would have to change the whole storyline of the arc of the film, not just that last shot.
But that's why also like him when Glenn Close like sends the note down and he reads it, it's like, you're a father. I know that's cheesy, you know what I mean? But it's like, I'm sorry. When you've had a long day and out there in the real world, it sucks. I like to imagine a world where I'm the baseball player and in the world where, you end it in a good note. But I guess when we talk about it, it would fall more into the Field of Dreams. Because the Field of Dreams aspect is, father and son playing a catch out front, and if I don't buy into that, that's probably why I don't buy into the movie, because me and my dad didn't do that. So it's like those, I get it. I get that. I get it.
Ryan says, book aside, it's poorly executed. I would absolutely epic fucking cast. I don't know if it's poorly executed. I just think it's just cheesy. But I mean,
that's the thing is it's extremely cheesy. I'll give it to that. But again, if it was a movie that I come across later, it wouldn't resent to me like a lot of probably movies for people. It's only because as that young youth. But again, Wilford Brimley itself, you got Gavin, what's his name from A Christmas Story, does a great job up in the
Yeah, as the Guy
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about. He's the dad from Billy Madison too.
Yeah.
What's
But
his
like,
name?
come on. But I'll admit, like, what's her name does not do a good job in the movie. Kim Basinger. Like her acting isn't really great in the movie.
Darren McGavin.
But the dude from Mrs. Doubtfire is the bad guy in the dark. Where he's
Yeah.
like, close the shades. I mean, that's
Yeah, Robert
ridiculous.
Prosky. Yeah, I was thinking too, like the dude from Starfire. Yeah,
As my wife would describe him.
But I did see there is a scene where they did hold true to the book, is when Glenn Close's character is standing up in the stands.
Yeah.
And they kind of make her look like a guardian angel. That's how it was like portrayed in the book. That's one part of the book I never understood, like the sick breast and that shit. I don't know. But in terms of like, they made her look like she's the good character, which is what they wanted to portray in the movie, and then they kind of took that from the book. I did like that aspect. I mean, it's iconic in terms of the home run scene at the end, the ripping the cover off the ball,
There's a lot of
rain. Like one of my favorite parts. I guess one of my favorite parts besides the ending.
Oh yeah,
because it's over. No, but the iconic shot of him breaking the scoreboard exploding. It was based off a real incident, that happened at Eberts Field where somebody hit the scoreboard. But when he rips the cover off the ball and it's rain, that slow shot of him sliding in the second safe. I always liked that because it's like it showed like back in the day they didn't give a shit. It was pouring rain. You had to play until the umpire called the game. And I thought that was like a nice little shot. And also, Wilford Brimley's probably my favorite character because he's such an asshole in the film.
Yes.
Hobbs, let me see your bat. Let me see your bat. Oh, you can use it if it's league standard.
Richard Farnsworth too, because I think misery, and him in this too. It's again the cat. I could see some of that you're talking about, but the cast, and all of that,
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, one of my favorites.
Love it or leave it.
Yeah, love it or leave it. Like I said, don't hate it. Just not one of my favorites, but I can understand why people like it so much, and it does have a very big following because every baseball person that I've known in my life has seen it, and they either really like it or really don't like it, but they have seen it, and they do understand the significance it has upon a person who likes baseball. But yeah, those are our 10 films. Let us know what your films would be, if you agree with us or you disagree with us or you don't like the fact that I'm not a huge fan of The Natural. Or you like the fact that I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't know. Let us know in the comments of this video or let us know at our Twitters at Lil Yumper and at the Sugar Baggy. So that's our 10 films, Tom. We had a short one today for this episode, but it was a lot of fun talking some sports talk, my man.
Yes.
So 5 films that people might have known we were going to be on the list, and 5 films that people probably might not have known. So I thought we had a good little mixture of the films that we had chosen. But the next thing we have to get into is what's coming in next week.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
What's coming up, Tone?
As we announced last week, this next Friday at 8 p.m., we will be going into Mad Max Fury Road. Right around the corner, we're going to have the release of Mad Max Furiosa. So we decided that we're going to take a look into the last Mad Max movie, which is just an amazing action smorgasbord, Fury Road. So please join into that show next Friday at 8 p.m.
Yeah, really big fan of the Mad Max series. Really looking forward to doing a deep dive in this. This will be a traditional deep dive where we actually go through the film for development and then go through scene by scene, as well as some fan theories and critical, response of the film. So really looking forward to getting back into old things. We might bring back a segment as well. We still have to line that up. But yeah, really looking forward to get back in the groove, my man. We'll be back at our regular time of 8 p.m. on Friday. So be sure to check us out that day. So really looking forward to this one. And to close us out, we're going to go with the Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
Hello. This week's soundtrack pick of the week is the Lost Highway soundtrack, released February 18th, 1997, from the David Lynch movie, The Lost Highway. A very, 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 for me at the time, interesting soundtrack because there is about 23 songs on it, but they're like soundscapes mixed in between songs by everyone, as you just heard, Smashing Pumpkins right there, doing a track called I, which was during their like Adore phase where they were a little more electronic, but also Nine Inch Nails doing The Perfect Drug, which just had a ridiculous music video where Trent Reznor had this ridiculous mustache. But also on the album is Lou Reed and even a little bit of Rammstein and a lot of other stuff, but just a really, really weird movie. The soundtrack itself is also feels very, very weird, just because of some of where the bands were at the time and just kind of what they released on the soundtrack. But have you ever seen Lost Highway?
No, I have not.
And because how deep have you dug into like David Lynch movies? Like have you seen like The Elephant Man?
Oh yeah. I've seen
his
Twin Peaks.
Big fan of Twin Peaks, but all fits right into that kind of feel. But the soundtrack, though, a lot of interesting artists.
I'm gonna check it out because I do like David Lynch. I think he's a very, very like he's one of those in terms of a writer. Like he's very unique in the way he writes films. Twin Peaks is probably like two of my favorite like films, and they're really out there.
Oh,
Actually, what the red, I think he's the Red Man in Twin Peaks. He plays the little person and Samson. It's not Sam. Yeah, Samson in Carnival, the HBO series. Eraserhead, another film from him that is completely out there in terms of horror.
Blue Velvet, if you've ever seen Blue Velvet, or Nicolas Cage and Wild at Heart. Crispin Glover is ridiculous in that movie. I like him because it seems like here is a gentleman who is able to present a vision that was totally against like what would you deem popular in the way the script is written, the way the movie is filmed, and is able to get such a wide variety of people to see his work has been pretty cool.
Yeah, he also directed the original Dune.
Yep.
Yeah, which is people hate that film. I can understand why, but I watched it before. It's not great, but it's not horrible.
It's good. I put it into that. It's some fun early 80s sci-fi cheese. Nothing like what the new movies are, but I like adventures. I like Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. So like I guess if I like that, Dune is gonna be okay in the early 80s.
Kroll. I like Kroll.
Yeah,
people don't like that film. But I'm actually looking. This is 1997. I'm actually gonna have to check this one out.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the movie. He did another movie after this one too called Mulholland Drive.
I've seen that. Very good.
Where I'll never forget getting the DVD and inside were like directions on how an easier way to watch the movie, and it was like, oh wow, this isn't gonna be I can just sit here and watch it. I gotta like follow the script, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
check it out. Bill Pullman. I'm a huge big Bill Pullman fan, and it's cool to see him star in a movie like this.
The President.
The President, yes, El Presidente. And, my dad would be very happy that you said that because that's what he would say all the time. That's our president right there. And yep, our president.
But good pick, Tone. Good pick.
Thank you.
So that's our show for the week. Let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know if we missed any films that you thought we should have talked about. I know The Sandlot was probably one of them. But those are our picks, like I said, and your picks can be yours. But thanks for joining us this week, Tone. This was a fun one. I know it was a short one, which is actually a good one to get short ones in there once in a while. Oh man, we're too close.
Oh, look at that. We're going right at you.
Yeah. But Tone, what you got coming up this week?
Oh, this week on Wednesday, please tune into the Hookup on Music because we're going to have a good show. What's going to be on it, I'm not sure yet. I definitely know that I have some awesome live footage from a recent Cypress Hill concert where we were live on the scene. So that, and we might have a guest. We'll just have to wait and see. But that'll be Wednesday at 7 p.m. So check on in.
Yep, and those are live 30-minute shows, and they're very, very good. They're short, and they're very good to watch. I don't know if Brian's doing draft beat this week, but I know he's doing a Princess Bride recasting with Muppet. I don't know if he's found his squad for that one yet, but he did do a 420 draft, which was hilarious, and he did a Arrested Development draft that was actually pretty good. I never watched Arrested Development that much. I watched it every once in a while. Those guys were him, Shankster, not Larry, and his buddy Kevin were giving like quote after quote after quote, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, I'm like you. I haven't really watched it a whole lot, but after watching them, it's like, oh man, I got to get right on this and start.
Yeah, it makes me want to watch it.
Yeah, that's what's cool.
And CPG actually released a blog on Godzilla, the new Godzilla Kong X, Rise of a Kingdom. So check it out. But with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you then.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?